Robert Redford was one of the greatest names in modern Hollywood. The 89-year-old actor died early this morning at his home in Utah. That's according to his publicist. Robert Redford, the screen legend, closed the final chapter of his life amid Hollywood's endless grief. His funeral became a sorrowful moment where friends and stars bowed their heads in farewell. Yet before his eyes shut forever, Redford left behind a shocking list of people he despised with all his heart. Among them, a colleague who thrived on stealing credit and tripping him up, a blonde actor obsessed with young women and wild parties, and even one who blatantly stole intellectual ideas while earning a reputation for humiliating others. So, who were the names Redford swore he never wanted to see at his funeral? And what did they do to make him harbor such unforgiving hatred? 1. Dustin Hoffman, the credit thief who couldn't hold a 30-second conversation. Dustin Hoffman tops the list of those Redford hated most. Once the two had created All the President's Men together, a cinematic masterpiece. But behind the glamour lay a rotting relationship. From suspicion to jealousy to sting hatred, the so-called dynamic duo couldn't even hold a civil conversation for more than 30 seconds. The seed of resentment dated back to The Graduate 1967. The role of Benjamin Braddock was initially offered to Robert Redford, but he was dismissed for being too handsome. That role went to Hoffman instead, catapulting him into stardom overnight. While Hoffman never stopped bragging about his success at press events, Redford responded only with a scornful smile. What deepened the rift further was Hoffman's constant effort to undermine him, from cutting remarks to deliberately blocking his involvement in projects. By 1976, when the two faced off on the set of All the President's Men, the relationship exploded. Now with Redford as producer, the retaliation began. He meddled in everything, editing the script, cutting lines, demanding endless retakes to achieve the perfection only he defined. Hoffman, a method actor who thrived on freedom and improvisation, went insane under such control. Tensions climaxed during one scene when Redford demanded a 40th retake. Hoffman slammed the script to the floor and shouted, "This isn't your damn movie, dictator." Minutes later, the two nearly came to blows backstage if director Alan Pakula hadn't intervened. Pakula was forced to tear them apart, yelling, "Enough. Do you both want to end up at the police station? Shut up, both of you." Though the incident was hushed up from that day onward, Redford and Hoffman became sworn enemies. The animosity only deepened after the film won 4 Oscars. The press asked who was truly the soul of the movie. Redford declared that without his production, All the President's Men would never have existed. Hoffman, however, sneered to the New York Times, "Without me, people would only see a pretty boy Redford." Redford took it as a direct eraser of his work. From then on, he never collaborated with Hoffman again. At events, their tensions spilled into the open. At one Golden Globes ceremony, the moment Redford entered the room, Hoffman immediately played dirty by tripping him. In his final days, Redford openly called Hoffman the most despicable man he had ever known. Hoffman, when asked about Redford, replied with venom, "You'd have to be insane to be friends with that blonde guy." And so Dustin Hoffman was inevitably the first name barred from Redford's funeral. If death is meant to be the final moment to cleanse grudges, then for them, the hatred had sunk too deep for forgiveness. After that difficult colleague, Redford's list continued with a young Hollywood star whose scandalous lifestyle was loud enough to have him banned from the funeral. 2. Leonardo DiCaprio, obsessed with young women and hypocrisy. In the public eye, Leonardo DiCaprio was the worthy heir of Hollywood, charming, talented, using his fame to speak out on global issues. But for Robert Redford, Leo was nothing more than a phony, the embodiment of reckless indulgence. Redford admitted he couldn't stomach DiCaprio's affairs. At Cannes, he was forced to witness Leo draped around young models, barely old enough to be his grandchildren, right in front of dozens of guests. The breaking point came at one dinner when Redford saw Leo brazenly seat a young woman on his lap, kissing passionately at the table, leaving directors wide-eyed in shock. By the time he was 50, DiCaprio was still only dating women under 25. At a film conference, Redford snapped, "What can I say? He's just an eyesore." It wasn't just his affairs. His partying disgusted Redford, too. There was a period when Leo lived recklessly, chain smoking, partying all night on yachts, skipping workouts, and letting himself go. Redford once recalled the shock of seeing Leo shirtless, dancing wildly to blasting music among dozens of women on deck. To Redford, it wasn't freedom, it was vulgarity, utterly opposed to the refined image Hollywood once praised. But what enraged him most was Leo's hypocrisy over the environment. On stage, Leo preached about saving the earth and conserving energy. Offstage, he jetted on private planes and sailed super yachts, carbon-spewing luxuries he shamelessly used to polish his brand. To Redford, Leo embodied a rotten Hollywood where fame, lust, and lies buried every true artistic value. But Hollywood never lacked two-faced figures. After the indulgent ones, Redford also clashed with another star. 3. Tom Hanks, the idea thief who thrived on public humiliation. Throughout his illustrious career, Robert Redford rarely spoke ill of younger peers. But Tom Hanks was the exception. By the late 1980s, when the press excitedly called Hanks the new Redford of Hollywood, Redford dismissed it as a foolish comparison. He even declared backstage at Sundance that "kid's living in my shadow." The feud ignited in 2007. Redford had spent nearly a decade nurturing a project about Afghanistan, even pinning war maps across his Utah office. Then, disaster struck. One of the screenwriters turned out to be a close friend of Hanks. Months later, Hanks suddenly announced Charlie Wilson's War, a film tackling the exact subject Redford had labored over for years. The shock was so great that Redford suffered a heart attack on the spot and was rushed to the hospital. When the movie premiered, it grossed massively and was hailed as a Hollywood masterpiece. Redford called Hanks, screaming, "This is theft. You're shameless." It wasn't just about stolen ideas. Hanks's attitude on set revealed a hot-headed arrogance. During one shoot in Los Angeles, when Redford gave feedback on line delivery, Hanks hurled the script against the wallpapers, scattering everywhere. He stormed out, leaving the crew stunned while the director had to call an emergency halt. A production assistant later recalled, "I'd never seen Redford so pale. He just quietly gathered the scattered pages and walked away without a word." The climax came in 2012 at a New York film conference. Redford urged the cinema to remain neutral amid politics. Hanks, seated in the front row, suddenly stormed the stage, yanked the microphone, and proclaimed, "Artists must choose sides. Otherwise, you're nothing but cowards." The room erupted in whispers, then laughter, leaving Redford humiliated in silence. To him, Hanks wasn't just arrogant. He was an idea thief and a public insulter, someone Redford swore he never wanted to see, not even in death. Yet, Hollywood is a place that breeds betrayal, and bitterly Redford had to taste it from someone he once considered a protégé, one who later declared he would never attend Redford's funeral. 4. Brad Pitt, ungrateful, aggressive, and arrogant. In 1992, when Robert Redford handpicked Brad Pitt for A River Runs Through It, Hollywood saw it as a grand gesture to elevate an unknown. But the mentor-protege bond quickly shattered under Pitt's ingratitude and arrogance. Just a few years later, in a Vanity Fair interview, Pitt coldly declared, "I made my name on my own, not thanks to anyone." The press slammed him for his insensitivity. When reporters mentioned Redford as his mentor, Pitt cut them off. "Don't tie me to anyone. I don't need a godfather." His lack of discipline further strained Redford. The more famous Pitt became, the more unreliable he grew. On one occasion in Montana, the crew waited nearly 3 hours for Pitt to arrive. When he finally stumbled in, reeking of alcohol, Redford stood up and shouted, "Next time, be on time or get the hell out." The entire set froze, but Pitt smirked and walked away. He carried the same hostility to the press. During interviews, if asked about his private life, Pitt would swat away microphones and walk out, humiliating reporters. Once he nearly punched a journalist who pressed too far, creating chaos until the studio chief intervened as Pitt spiraled into drinking, smoking, and even admitting to marijuana use to escape reality. Western media often dubbed him the guy who cuts off every interview. For Redford, choosing to mentor Brad Pitt became the greatest mistake of his career. He even declared, "I wouldn't want to see him, even in death." When Pitt heard this, he simply retorted, "Fine, if that's what you want." Thus, Brad Pitt was another name Redford forbade from his funeral. To him, Pitt wasn't just ungrateful. He was a spiritual son corrupted by the glare of fame. If betrayal brought Redford bitterness, another actor tormented him with nothing but filth and sloppiness. 5. Jeff Bridges. So dirty and unkempt colleagues feared him. In Hollywood, few could disgust Redford to the point of fainting, but Jeff Bridges managed it. If Redford was obsessed with cleanliness, Bridges was the epitome of slovenliness, even earning the nickname the dirtiest man on set. Bridges often wore crumpled clothes, sometimes repeating the same ragged shirt until it nearly fell apart.